correct? So as
Yes.
soon as the first slide comes up, that's a start. So 1, 2, 3 in terms of where we're going. And as soon as we get into full slide mode, you can just automatically start.
We are here to promote best academic practice models for Black students campaign. Our purpose is to identify 1,001 achieving schools and districts nationwide. Join and make a difference.
The mission of the NAACP remains critical and more relevant now than at any time in our history. Our commitment to achieve equity and social inclusion by advancing policies and practices that expand human and civil rights especially applies to the education of our kids. They're the most vulnerable among us. Despite decades of effort, the achievement gap for Black students persists. Through this campaign, our leadership will directly impact the educational outcomes for the students in our communities. It will accelerate the well-being and economic security of Black people of African descent and all persons of color. Advocating for best academic practice models for Black students is our opportunity to change the narrative by highlighting and duplicating what's already working within many underperforming schools across the nation.
Dr. Nweze.
Good evening. I am so excited and happy about being with our team one more time. And each time I come, I am just as excited as the first time. And tonight, it gives me such a wonderful privilege to be able to let everyone know that our chairman of the board of the NAACP announced to me today that he was appointing a committee, a national committee, to answer the questions about all of what the president of the United States is saying and has said. So he wants to be sure that, number one, that we put none other than our very own co-founder and leader on the committee to represent our team. And I am just so happy. I'm fighting the tears. Congratulations, Mr. Chair, Mr. Leader, Mr. Co-founder, Mr. President, and I got a lot more beautiful titles to give you.
Thank you, Dr. Nweze. President Roberts.
It's my pleasure as Tom Roberts, President of the Ohio Conference of Branches, the NAACP, to share our journey with you. Beginning in 2015, some members of this team met in Washington with the president then of the NAACP and the Ohio United States Chamber of Commerce at a meeting called The Path Forward. At that time, there was discussion on where the two groups could work together to bridge the gap between Black students in this nation. The group came back to Ohio, and when I became president in 2017, we began to meet with the superintendent of public education. It was at that time that he announced to us that they had established lower expectations for Black students over white students. This was unacceptable to me and the members who later on became the members of this task force. We began to look at every school in the state of Ohio and came up with 11 that we thought are the best schools in Ohio. So we can compare ourselves to schools in Ohio and no place else in the country. And from that, the team came up with the best academic practice models for Black students. I'm excited about the work this team is doing. They're meeting nightly, but they're setting models. They're setting higher expectations for our babies because our babies can do better if we set the bar high. I'm excited that this now will become part of the national agenda for the NAACP.
My name is WilliAnn Moore, and I'm the co-founder of the Ohio President's Task Force, which was established in the year 2015, after attending the Pathway Forward conference in Washington, D.C., sponsored by the National Chamber of Commerce and the National NAACP under the leadership of then President and CEO Cornell Brooks. Having an education background and a master's degree in special ed, and having been unit president for 10 years, and Ohio State Education Chair for 19 years, and still Ohio Task Force Technical Co-Chair, I'm excited. I am so excited to say that we are now changing the dialogue and the paradigm for those negative thinking people who believe that our children are not capable of achieving at the ABC level and above on biased standardized tests. And we know that the tests are biased, but our children are achieving. We know through empirical data that if Black students are challenged with high expectations, the barriers are removed, and the curriculum is rigorous enough, our students will rise to the occasion the same way they do in sports, where the goals are the same for all. We have validation that best academic practices work. Adults in power just have to be willing, and we're saying willing, to commit to academic excellence for Black students throughout this country. We ask you to join this campaign, because if we don't fight for our children, who will?
Picking up on where Mrs. Moore left out, my name is Jimma McWilson, and I'm co-founder of the Family Empowerment Student Achievement Institute, and was at the 2015 function with Dr. Nweze, who is on this call, and Mrs. Moore, as you will see later in the presentation. And we were challenged by Dr. Nweze to come up with something, anything that could be presented in a way that would highlight what our children not only are doing, but more of them are qualified to do. As Mrs. Moore said, one, if they have a qualified instructor in the classroom, two, the necessary resources are in place for the teacher to teach, and three, the barriers for that educator, the student, and the parents are removed. Those three things are done. You normally find schools that are doing what we're expecting of them to do, both at the state level based on standardized tests, which would be 50% proficient and above, or at the local level, where on a 4.0 scale, we're expecting 2.0 and above, no D's, no F's. It sounds like what it is. We're setting a standard that we can use and everyone can agree to across the board. So I ask you to think about what we're doing, join what we're doing, add to what we're doing, but most importantly, support and help empower our families and students and their educators to take us to the next level.
Welcome. My name is James Brown. I am president of NAACP Youngstown branch, which is the epicenter of academic segregation in the integrated school district here in Ohio. I am the state of Ohio co-chair for the Task Force on Best Academic Practice Models for Black Students. I am chair of the Ohio Conference Reentry Committee. I am a workforce development professional who has been a member of this task force since its inception, and I welcome all of you who are willing to join us in this fight.
Hi, my name is Phillis Denise Flowers. I'm an attorney and resident of Toledo, Ohio. I have represented disabled adults and children since 1979 and Disability Matters. Oftentimes, I've also had to represent children in educational matters as well. I have found the work with the Ohio State Task Force on Education to be most rewarding. I also find working with my colleagues who are some of the most dedicated and courageous people I know, to be an honor to work right along with them. We do ask that you join us in this journey of justice for our children.
My name is Louis Muhammad. I'm the first vice president of the Mahoning County Youngstown branch of the NAACP. I saw something in a book written by Minister Farrakhan that said that we needed to fix the public school systems. And so when I saw the work being done years ago, I felt that this was a fulfillment of a need because of my travels and the experiences of my family members who had been locked out of education. You know, my father and mother picked cotton. My grandfather was one who had limited education. And because of all of this, I witnessed my father striving to improve his life all the way to the grave. He was a part of a school that was called People Are Hurting. And he was achieving high, but he was at the end of his life. And I feel that it's important that nobody, they say no child left behind. And so no child should have to work from behind. And I believe that children of African descent in America should have the opportunity, and the bar needs to be set high so that they don't enter into the workforce or into this world striving to catch up, because they already was designed that they be left behind. So I'm happy to be a part of this group of wonderful human beings that are putting their effort to fixing something that is definitely broken.
Good evening. My name is Darla Dunlap, and I'm a member of the Youngstown, Ohio Mahoning Valley NAACP. I'm the unit secretary, education justice chair, and also a member of the Ohio State Task Force. I was born and raised in Youngstown and returned in 2015 after raising a family in another community. I've always been involved in the schools with my children and in the districts that they worked in. I came home, and as being someone who volunteers and helps and wants to make a difference, decided that I would teach financial literacy and youth entrepreneurship skills to youth and adults. This came about as I was volunteering, and one of my students had tried to commit suicide, had never been faced with that. So it tugged at my heart, and I had to find ways, I felt, that we could help our children that didn't cost money. All you needed was the time and the willingness to work with them. When I returned home to Youngstown, there was a wall of resistance met, and I soon found out that our children could not read, could not write, and do basic math problems. Thus, my introduction to the Youngstown NAACP, who was involved at that time with the schools, had a lawsuit of 25 years of failure, but had the best academic practice for Black students that they were presenting. My work continues because I feel our students, our youth, need the role models that this program could benefit for them in life, in their careers, and in communities across the country. Legal.
I'm a native of Youngstown, Ohio, currently serving my second term as treasurer for our local NAACP branch and a member of the Ohio Task Force. My name is Pamela Brown, and I'm a semi-retired nutritionist, Youngstown State University graduate. Most of my dietetics and food service management career has been spent working within correctional and healthcare facilities in Southern Ohio. I'm also the grandmother of two brilliant granddaughters who attend public elementary schools in Dayton and Columbus, Ohio. My commitment to the task force stems from a deep concern for the success of my girls in a failing school system, or one that provides a segregated education in an integrated school. Also, I've observed and worked with convicts and inmates in maximum, medium, and minimum security prisons, many whose life stories could have been very different had the type of education the Ohio Task Force is advocating for been available to them.
"2025 and beyond. As a people, we have always faced times of challenge and controversy head on. The Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King said, "The ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in the moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy."
Our African history begins with Kemetic civilization. This slide represents the greatness of a people whose existence seems to have been made invisible and erased. So we must teach our own history. We must remember, we must study. Anyone who refuses to study is the enemy to the rise of this once great people. And we need to teach our accomplishments from the maxims of Ptahhotep 2350 BC to Africans in 2025 AD. Our African history begins in Waset and Kemet, renamed Thebes by Greeks and Luxor by the Arabs. Look at those monuments of a once great people who now lie in ruin. Our story and the United States dollar bill with our symbols on it. If you notice on the back of the dollar bill, there's a pyramid there with 13 rows of block, and it's left incomplete purposely because it's supposed to represent the durability and the longevity of America. Those and the eye and that pyramid are symbols that they stole from you that really represents them basing their world and their vision for America on what they notice of the greatness of our Kemetic civilization from the beginning. We have to become those who teach our own history.
Based upon what's before us, that you heard Dr. Nweze announce this 8th day of February 2025, there was a 2025 plan submitted. And I would submit to you that if we want to know what we need today, we need to look back, as with the Sankofa, look back in order to go forward. And where would we look back to? If we look back to 725, what did our people do when the Arabs started the enslavement of Africans? If we look back to 1425, we have to ask the question, what did our people do when the Portuguese entered the enslavement of African people? If we look at 1525, we would ask, what did our people do when they were being enslaved by the Spanish? Subsequent to that, what did our people do in 1625, where they were being enslaved by the Dutch, the British, the French, and the beginnings of the United States of America? What did our people do in 1725? What did they do in 1825 in the Americas, whether you're speaking of the United States or Peru or Brazil, Colombia? What did our people do? What did people in the United States do in 1925 at the height of Jim Crow, at the height of a new administration that had just come in and resegregated the entire federal government? Those dastardly deeds have been faced by our people during all of this time. So when we ask, what do we do now in 2025, we have to answer the call. We have to understand that fear, false education accepted as real, subordinates and leads to despair. But courage overcomes, as you've seen from 725 to 1925 to 2025, and leads to success. This is not simply a United States issue. This is a geopolitical issue, and the need of these people to falsify our history and ourselves has been acutely discussed and documented by Dr. McWilson. The Arabs, the Persians, the Portuguese, the Spanish, the French, the British, Austria, Hungary, Belgium, the Danish, Germans, Italians, Dutch, Russians, Swedish, Norwegians, Turks, and finally the Americans are doing to the African descendant what is being done in the United States. So we're at the center of the power of the day, but rest assured, the power of the day, although not discussed, is in cahoots with all of these nations to do one thing: falsify the African consciousness, convince them that they're an imitation of them, teach them their language, deculturate, de-Africanize, destroy the Black family, degrade, debase, and finally dehumanize our people. So we need to be real clear that the only reason we are able to fight the fight in 2025 is because of what they did starting in 725. And we have a great history. If we go back to Kemet and look at that history, we know that all that they say we can't do today, our people have already done.
The mental problem. The mental problem is brainwashing. Stephen Biko said, "The most potent weapon of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed." Brainwashing is a forcible indoctrination to induce someone to give up basic political, social, or religious beliefs and attitudes and to accept contrasting, regimented ideas. Akin to that is menticide. Menticide is a systematic and intentional undermining of a person's conscious mind. And described by Malcolm X, Malcolm said that the Black brother is so brainwashed that he may reject the truth when he first hears it. You have to drop a little bit on him at a time and wait a while to let it sink in before advancing to the next step. That next step is now. In order for you to understand brainwashing and menticide, a book that you can reference is called The Rape of the Mind. It's the psychology of thought control, menticide, and brainwashing by Juste Merleau. It's a good resource.
The education problem is the fact that, the education problem has 4 books that are crucial for us to understand the problems that we face today. Youngstown City School Districts was the epicenter of failure for African American students in the state of Ohio. The State Board of Education, renamed now the Department of Education and Workforce, under the direction of Mrs. Sybil Edward McNabb and Miss Ophelia Averett, National Membership Chair of the NAACP, came together and to implement the best academic practice model for African American students. Dr. Adora Nweze, Florida State Conference President and National Board of Education Chair, duplicated and enhanced the campaign to include all NAACP state conferences. The 4 books that were referenced: The Miseducation of the Negro Educated by the System, and then The Miseducation of the Negro After His Education Provided Inadequate Education, Miseducation of the Black Child, The Hare Plan, Educate Every Black Man, Woman, and Child, Dr. Julia Hare and Dr. Nathan Hare, and The Miseducation to Incarceration by Dr. Donald Evans. The bus, the Ohio Task Force came together in Youngstown and provided a bus that showed the segregated school systems in an integrated system in Ohio, looking at inferior expectations that targeted and placed Black students at the bottom. In the proposal letter, you will receive, in your packet, you will receive the proposal letter, spreadsheet, Excel sheet, and a link that will take you and show you the numbers that you gather with the bus.
The legal problem. In March of 1857, the United States Supreme Court, led by Chief Justice Roger B. Taney, declared that all Blacks, slaves and free, were and could not ever become citizens of the United States. So they were not and they could never become. The legal solution came on May 17th, 1954, in a United States Supreme Court decision, Brown versus Board of Education. Chief Justice Earl Warren stated that today, education is perhaps the most important function of state and local governments. Further, he stated that such an opportunity, when provided, is a right which must be made available to all on equal terms.
The timeline to Best Academic Practice Models for Black Students National Network Campaign consists of 3 important dates that led to the approval by the NAACP National Board of Directors. It's October 14th, October 15th, and October 19th.
In 2015, the NAACP and the U.S. Chamber of Commerce released a joint report titled A Path Forward for African Americans, which outlined a series of policy recommendations aimed at addressing systemic racial disparities in areas like employment, criminal justice, healthcare, but explicitly stating education as the key element that this particular gathering would be addressing. As you see, the path forward was attended by then President CEO Cornell Brooks of the National NAACP, and our guiding light and National Board Education Chair, but still Florida State Conference Chair, Dr. Adora Nweze, was there at that particular time and gave the clarion call to any and all education chairs that were under the sound of her voice. She asked, whatever you do, we have to stop talking about this and do something about it. That was when we then stated that there has to be something that can be done, but everybody was talking. She said, fine, whatever you're talking about, that's fine, but do something, bring it to me and I'll work with you in any way that I can. She had enough faith in Mr. McWilson and I to give us a go-ahead and that she would work with us. We then went to, as you can see, President Brooks in the middle, Mr. McWilson on the right, and I am on the left. We went to him and we asked different questions as to how we could be a part of the solution. And he definitely stated that we were on the right track. But the only problem was he was voted out and the path forward plan was put on the shelf. It is now off the shelf and it has feet. It started to walk and now it's on a train and it's moving, and the train is moving and we will not turn back and the train will not stop.
National NAACP Board of Directors approval steps started with Dr. Adora Nweze, chair of the NAACP Board Education Committee, as they met and approved a proposal to promote best academic practice models for Black students nationwide network. That was October 14th. October 15th, the very next day, the National NAACP Board of Directors Advocacy and Policy Committee met and approved proposal to promote best academic practice models for Black students nationwide network. Attorney Michael Curry is the chair of that committee. And then on October 19th, the National Board of Directors met that day. The best academic practice models for Black students nationwide network was on the agenda for consideration and approved by the full board, with Leon Russell, chairman of the NAACP National Board of Directors. The background is the path forward, improving opportunities for African American students. Day one, when you receive your information, you'll click the link and it will show you the YouTube video regarding that day's events, the day one events. When you receive your information, you will click on the next link, which is Task Force on Best Academic Practice for Black Students in 2016. You can also click on the three remaining links: the NAACP Youngstown Local Branch Model, the NAACP Ohio State Conference Model, and the NAACP Florida State Conference Models. Will all show you steps that were taken prior to the approval. And the model, Best Academic Practice Models for Black Students National Network of 2023, was adopted from the San Diego model of 2005.
The best academic practice models for Black students going through the fire to save our children came from the National NAACP National Board of Directors, the NAACP State Conference Presidents and Executive Committee, proposal approval with implementation of the scope of work, the NAACP State Branches and Executive Committee, the NAACP Education Committee and Task Force, the NAACP Membership Awareness Campaign, where you communicate to your membership and to create a community collaboration to inform our parents, families, school districts, and boards, and to send the documentation on the student's achievement to the National NAACP Board. Join the campaign to help our Black students succeed in the classroom. Ohio has identified 446 districts that are doing that and showing that our Black children can and do succeed.
Make history. Become an achievement ambassador. Step 1, join the network. You do not have to be a local or state chair of education in order to join this network. All we require is someone who has the courage and willingness to help our Black students.
Step 2, create a state NAACP task force committee or whatever in order to get people involved at that level and to carry out the work.
Step 3, you have to, once you have created the state task force, you must assign a lead person. That person will be the person that will help you with all of your technical issues and helping to train the other people within your units. We are asking this task force, we're only asking for you to attend a 60-minute training session. That could be your education chair, your president, your entire executive committee. And it does not have to be at 8 o'clock because we meet at 8 o'clock every night, 24/7. It does not have to be during our time. If you let us know, we will make the right provisions in order to accommodate you at whatever time you have asked to be trained. But there must be willing people that would want to help African American descent children. We're just asking you to be trained and help our students. That training is important. It is definitely important.
Each state is to acquire the data through their state sites. Example, the Ohio Education and Workforce Development Site for public records requests. Once your data is received, verify and validate the information for African American students and control at 50% and above.
Step 5, you will filter the acquired reading and math data controlling for Black students. And in Ohio, we have identified 446 schools and districts where Black students are scoring 50% and above proficiency.
Step 6, segregate reading and math data by your local branches in your state and share with each local president or education chair or task force.
It's been said, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with others. In step 7, we ask you to share with local districts, schools, families, and the media what you have learned in the preceding 6 steps. You want to collaborate and build relationships and collaborations to go the distance. This is a campaign. It's not a project or a program. It's a campaign, something that's never been done before. Become an educational achievement ambassador and make history.
As an ambassador, through civil rights advocacy, we must demand, duplicate, and replicate the replication of Black academic practice models for Black students. That is a #1 tool, the advocacy and the demands that we place, that this be implemented.
The task force implementation steps. The phase 1 responses were due between October 19, 2024 to January 11, 2025. As you can see here, 29 state conferences have responded. The states with an asterisk next to them have already selected a point person. We anticipate the rest of the state conferences will be on board shortly. The solution. The solution identified once by President Harry Truman talked about, he said, the only thing new in the world is the history you don't know. Humans tend to do the same dumb things and the same evil things again and again because we forget. The solution is not to forget. and to promote best academic practice models for Black students campaign by identifying 1,001 achieving schools and districts nationwide. Come and join us and make a difference.
If we change the way we see and celebrate academic achievement for African American students, there are several things we need to get across. First, we need to accept that to be an educated person, we need to be proficient in all of the areas of life that are major areas that we know we deal with. We know we have to be healthy in spirit and mind and body in order to carry out the other 11. We could be rich, could have a PhD, be an attorney, be a doctor, but if we are unhealthy in those areas, we will not be able to help sustain an environment and environmental conditions, not just the environment in terms of nature, but the environmental conditions within which our children live in order to be able to deliver best academic practices. We must clearly teach them, as was stated up front, who in the world are you? Where in the world did you come from? How in the world did you get here? And what in the world are you doing? In academics and economics and entertainment and religion, law, politics, and sex and war, as was stated by President Brown, these things have been happening since people have known that they were happening, have happened, are now happening, and are going to happen in the future. The problem is if we forget, then we lose out. But the family is the core of our community. It can't be done without them. There is no community if there is no family. That means there's a father, there's a mother, and they're involved in their loving the youth that they bring forth. So everything is around this comedic achievement pyramid because, one, you've been asked to stop what you're doing now and begin to investigate on your own the Kemetic civilization which our people started. Anyone that tells you they didn't, then you just ask if they did. The pyramids are there not because of Europe, not because of Arabs, not because of Persians. They are there because of the God-created Black African people who were there first. So we need to look at that achievement. And finally, we need to look at that achievement over time, which means take a look at the pyramids, understand the size of them, why are they aligned, and how are they aligned astrologically. These are very important pieces to our understanding who we are. Malcolm X was real clear about this when he said, education is our passport to the future, for tomorrow belongs to the people who prepare for it today. We are trying to prepare our children, not at the same rate as the past, because that's what got us here. We're stagnant. We need to enhance, enrich, and accelerate at every level in every state in order to get our children the necessary education foundation that they need to achieve in all of the areas listed, as you can see. One of the ways that we've set up to assist you is we put in place various templates that work. They work on a small scale with 2 or 3 people. They work on a large scale with thousands of people. What you see in the 2 pictures on your screen is you see thousands of parents and students coming together at a convention center for one thing and one thing only: best academic practice, students, parents, and teachers. In the second picture, you see thousands of parents at Youngstown State University in Ohio, where we duplicated that at a university level with the kids sitting in the same seats that the college graduates graduated from the day before. So the day after, we brought in the kids so they could sit in the same seats. Those kinds of things are important because that's how we set up an academic achievement Olympian society. These are very important. These things were put in place because we have agency. If we have agency, it simply means we have the power to do it. We don't have to ask someone to do it. We didn't ask anyone to do this. We did it. The Parents' Student Union was put together so parents could self-educate. It's simple. It's an ABC site. It's not fancy, but parents can get specific answers. They can make specific contacts. The Family Empowerment Student Achievement Institute is exactly what it says. If the family's empowered, and where you find families empowered, you do find student achievement. That's just that's the name is in fact what happens. And the the African World Exploratory University is what people need to get. That was put together so that people could understand who are the master teachers, ancient times and in current times. And so all of that is available to you just with a phone call. It does not cost you money. You can do events if you have money, but you most certainly can start doing events on academic achievement if you have no money. And those models, those templates are available to you.
And the only way we can fail is if we do not try.
Earlier, the education chair from Youngstown spoke of going through the fire to save our children. There is an arsonist out in the community that is not only setting fires in 2025, but they have a plan to set more fires. We need to be prepared to conduct through all of the steps from the national board to have one NAACP team that is trained to go into the fire and rescue our children. We can't save them if we're not willing to go get them. They are in every state. They're in every city. They're in every town. And we have to make sure whether there's one Black child there in the fire or 100 or 1,000. We have to have the knowledge, skills, and abilities essential to achieve success. So if you're prepared to go through the fire to save our children, regardless of where you are, now is the time to step up and take charge.